Hello and welcome to a little knitting episode from me. My name is Helle, or Helle, and I'm coming to you from Odense in Denmark, incidentally the town where Hans Christian Andersen was born. Just FYI. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have a few things on the agenda. My one finished object, my work in progress, and then a few knitting plans. One thing that's coming up that I will begin knitting probably next week. And then a little bit of dream knits. And I think I distinguish between knitting plans and dream knits because knitting plans are the ones that are very, very likely to actually come into existence. Whereas dream knitting is that very long list of things that I simply want to try, but I just don't knit fast enough for all of them to come into existence. So I'll share some of what I'm up to and what I might be up to. And hopefully you'll either get inspired or simply have someone to listen to while you sit and knit. So at any rate, welcome. And just a few words on this channel because it's called Danish Musings, which is not a very knitty sounding name because it was a bit more of a regular channel to begin with, showing my life, my travels, thoughts on life, things like that. Now, of course, I've branched into knitting as well, and I certainly intend to continue that as long as it's fun and brings you something, then brings me something as well. And of course, the first many viewers I had skipped the knitting videos, just like some of you who watch the knitting videos skip the other videos, and that's obviously completely fine. There's a little select group who watch both, and everybody is completely welcome here. So I hope you understand that I will probably switch back and forth between the different types of videos. I can't knit fast enough to produce knitting videos all that often, but nor do I experience major things in my life to produce that kind of video often. So it's actually ideal for me to switch back and forth a little. Maybe I should also say that I mainly share what I plan to knit or what I'm currently knitting or have knitted in these videos, and not really sort of 10 great patterns for summer or spring. There are other channels that do that excellently, so no need for me to do that. For instance, Young Folk Knits or The Woolly Worker, they have some pretty good podcasts that showcase different summery and springy patterns, so I would check them out if that's what you're into. And I'd like to also share a little quote that I found, which I think is also quite useful for those of us who are knitters or makers of any kind. Well, anybody who's creative, and we all are creative, even if we don't consider ourselves creative. It was written on a card given to me by a student years ago, and it was said by Anne Bronte, the less famous sister of Charlotte Bronte and Emily Bronte of Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, respectively. This is by Anne Bronte, and she said, "All our talents increase in the using, and every faculty, both good and bad, strengthens by exercise." So our talents increase in the using. That's where we as knitters come in. Even if you think you only have a small talent, it definitely increases in the using, especially if you continually try to challenge yourself a little. But I also like this, every faculty, both good and bad, strengthens by exercise. So if you're good at practicing gratitude, you will be even more able to feel grateful, presumably, etc. So that's the quote for today. You will notice that I'm in a slightly different setting today because I thought, why not switch things up a little? And also, we've got the garden outside, and I've been waiting for that for 9 months, or it feels like that anyway. So I wanted to just bring some of that into the video. I've also bought a bit more yarn, whose journey here was quite special, from Canada. So I'll share that with you later in the video as well. So first up is my finished object, which is what I'm wearing. This is the Xeon kimono by Aegyoknit, and I simply love it. I'll put in some clips where I wear it so you can see it from a little further away. The kimono comes in 2 sizes. I knitted the smallest, and as you can see, it's pretty roomy. In the pattern, it tells you where you can add extra stitches for extra length if you're taller than someone like me, 5'4", which you probably are. The pattern is out, if not on Ravelry, then on their homepage, which I'll link to in the show notes. First, a little something about the style. It's called Xeon kimono because it's a kimono, but it really has the same function as a cardigan, which to me is ideal because I don't have enough cardigans in my closet. I still have a few store-bought cardigans, and one of them is a gray cashmere, so of course I wear that all the time, but it's actually too warm for me right now, and I generally just don't have enough cardigans. So this does the same job. You know, it's something you can just throw over, and I really appreciate that. What I also love about this is that it's really cozy. In the pattern, they describe it as loungewear, but it's also, to me, at any rate, pretty classy. And it also has a nice silhouette, which they're often all about, and I appreciate that. The yarn combination makes it quite delicate. I've showed it before. This is what remains of my Isa Trio 1, and this powdery, or powder color it's called, paired with Isa Silk Mohair in the color 6, which is like this beige color. So the color lands somewhere in between. It's not quite a dusty rose, but nor is it beige, and I like those in-between colors sometimes. They're quite subtle, and a couple of people on Instagram suggested that it reminded them of, it had a vintage look, and somebody else wrote it reminded them of a boudoir. I get positive vibes from that, not a seedy vibe. So I think I know what they mean. That it has that sort of vintage look, and I love that. The pattern has 2 yarn combinations. You can of course choose whatever combination you want, something altogether different. But this is this combination of Isa Trio 1 and Silk Mohair is one of them. The other yarn combination is Kinu Silk and Sensai Silk Mohair from Ito Yarn. But there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to use other yarn combinations as well, like more woolly wintry yarns, as long as they drape and you get gauge. Trio 1, by the way, is a plant-based yarn. It's 50% linen, 30% cotton, and 20% lyocell, which is some kind of upcycled plant-based yarn. So, you know, depending on what your budget is, what you've got available, what your color preferences are, you can take a look at the ones that exist already and get inspired from there. If I was a faster knitter, I would be tempted to knit this in another color. Could you imagine it in black? Oh, that would be lovely. Or like a light minty color, or the purple one that Caroline also wears in a picture on Instagram, Caroline from Aegyoknit. So it's a very versatile garment, I feel. It's knitted from sleeve to sleeve, which is also quite unique, and they've done that before with the Eurus sweater. So you cast on here, and then you knit all the way over, and you knit in the round here. And then once you get to, I forget where, but not that far in, you begin to knit flat. That's like you have this big back panel, and it looks maybe a little complex, but it's not. It consists mainly of knits and purls and a lot of fisherman's rib. And the fisherman's rib is, or half fisherman's rib, I think. The fisherman's rib is really nice to knit. Something I want to show you. If you're thinking of knitting this pattern, please take a look at their way of describing how to knit the fisherman's rib. If you look here, you can see that the side that faces outward is actually the side that a lot of people consider the wrong side. Most people consider the wrong side, but they, Aegyoknit, have used the wrong side as the right side in several of their patterns. and in this one as well. And I think a few people have not quite read, either not read the instructions in the pattern or just chosen to ignore them and put the other side out. And of course you can do what you want. But if you intend this look, then please take care. It is actually described in the pattern how you do it. Something else, to me it was, I don't know if it's because I'm a tight knitter or if because it was small needles and a small cable in the very beginning, but I cast on using a slightly larger needle and then just changed to the correct size needle to begin with, because otherwise it was really hard for me to get those little stitches off the needle and also to gather in the round. So you can use magical or whatever suits you, except for the first 3 or 4 rounds or something like that. It's all knitted on 4mm needles or US 6. And this, you got to be a little vigilant here. I think I missed a little section where I was supposed to do Fisherman's rib and I did just knit stitches, but you can't tell. I'm not too worried about that. But once you get from up here and all the way across the back, it's, you're just going back and forth. It's pretty easy. Then comes shaping here and there, and decreasing and increasing for the shape of the sleeves. And once you're done with the main part of the kimono, that stops here. You pick up here and knit the ribbing back and forth, and then there's a few short rows to make it slightly narrower in the back so that it has a nice drape across the shoulders. It's not a difficult pattern, I wouldn't say, but you gotta be vigilant when it comes to the Fisherman's rib. The explanation is there, and if you're in doubt, I would absolutely look up videos. I did for the first couple of sweaters that I knitted using half Fisherman's rib. I looked up so I was completely sure. And then you can always compare, does your fabric look the way this one does or hers, if you take a look at photos close up. Something else I just wanted to show you, just for the record, this is what my pattern looks like pretty much once I've knitted that part. And this is the last page. So especially for beginning knitters, don't think that we all sit there and can just remember what we've knitted. I take a lot of notes and really make sure to sort of check done that, because otherwise I won't know where I am. And sometimes you can read your knitting and you can see where you are, but at other times it can be tricky and you really want to know that you're on the right track. So I don't have a separate file for notes if I have the printed out pattern. If I only use a digital pattern, I will definitely make notes on a separate piece of paper. Oh, and one more thing about this kimono. I mentioned in the previous video that I sometimes use the weave in Steven, or I used it many years ago before he called it that, but that technique where you weave in new yarn as you add it along the way. But then you can see it woven in on the inside. And it usually doesn't matter if it's a sweater or pullover, but it matters, I think, when it's a cardigan, because you may walk around and the fabric may sort of swoosh a little, and maybe you can see the inside at some point. So I didn't do that for this garment. And also in another one of their patterns, they recommend adding the new yarn and just knit maybe 5 or 6 stitches where you were using the old yarn and the new yarn, and then gradually switch over, and you cannot tell at all, and it's then automatically woven into the fabric, and I think that's useful. So you don't have to weave in a lot of ends toward the end anyway. But this kimono didn't use very many, I forget how many, it'll say on Ravelry, but I think maybe 4 balls of this yarn. So I didn't obviously have to change yarn all that many times, because this one has a lot of yardage. Just briefly want to broach the word neutrals, because some people have commented on several of my videos that I use neutrals. And I think neutrals, somebody mentioned that neutrals supposedly is a color that goes with everything, hence its neutrality. You can pair it with different other colors, bolder colors. And I think apparently there's only like a very limited spectrum of colors that fall into the neutrals, like white and beige and gray. Neons have now become part of that neutral group, which is interesting. I guess you could claim that they do pair with many things. I don't know, but what I know is that somebody else, I think I saw somebody else mention on a podcast that neutrals is one thing. It's that group I just mentioned. But then we have the pastels. And the pastels are maybe the same light colors, but they're not necessarily neutral, because you cannot necessarily pair one pastel with a bold color. So I just thought that's kind of interesting. You know, I don't really have an opinion either way, but as you can see for this one and a couple of my other sweaters, I do gravitate to lighter colors, but especially in the spring. And I think it's also because these are hand knitted garments. If you could see my wardrobe, I swear most of it is black and dark gray clothes with a pop of color and some light colors here and there. But I find I just don't want to knit much, at least right now, in those really dark colors. For one thing, I can't see my stitches. For another, it's difficult to see cable work or any kind of texture if it's really dark. Having said that, I've just ordered some dark yarn. And also, having said that, I know I will go for moodier colors once we get to autumn again, because I do like dark and moody knits as well. So, but as I said, especially drawn to the light colors right now, which brings me to what I'm knitting on right now, my work in progress. And I mentioned last time that I was going to begin the Joni top by Moonstruck Knits, or Natasha Hornby of Moonstruck Knits. This is as far as I've gotten. Whoops, let me just unfold it a little. This is as far as I've gotten so far. It has this beautiful lace panel on the front, which is what I fell in love with when I first saw her post a picture of it. I first saw her post a picture of it together with some other lacy garments. And it was completely the way she framed it that drew me in. Yeah, of course, I'm not going to have that kind of t-shirt underneath. Yeah, so I think I'm going to love this garment so much when I'm done with it. But Natasha Hornby had framed it in such a way that I forget if she mentioned the Edwardian shirts or blouses, but she wrote and showed it with other white garments, saying that she had a penchant or something for those white lacy shirts or blouses, and I definitely do too. I have a penchant for white shirts in general, definitely also including anything that resembles something Edwardian with the lace panel, or the Gibson girl aesthetic. And this, I think, is definitely going to do that. I remember years ago I used to buy a lot of vintage dresses online, and for a while I searched for Edwardian dresses and blouses, and I found quite a lot that had similar looking panels and sometimes a little lacy thing here, but they would always be hopelessly tight around the waist. And I realized, of course, it's because they wore corsets. So there went that idea of walking around in my garden in a lacy Edwardian dress, which was perhaps all for the good. But I'm enjoying knitting this. I think it's the first summer knit that I'm knitting this time round. I did knit a white ribbed t-shirt many years ago. Back then too, I guess I gravitated toward the white knits during the summer. And I was not in doubt when I saw the picture of her wearing it, especially with the plants in the background. It hits the balance between something that's beautiful and delicate and elegant, but also simple and not cutesy. So I like the nostalgic feel of it, but it's become more contemporary, which I think is a really good combo. I used to not knit a whole lot of summer garments because I wasn't really attracted to them. Last summer, I knitted one in a yarn that I couldn't really wear afterward, the yarn duo, which is a combination of wool and cotton. And I have to go for summer yarns that have no wool in them, I've found. But most of the patterns I saw last year, I just wasn't drawn to it. I was definitely more into the sweaters. But this year, something has happened. So now I'm there for the summer knits. Maybe that was kickstarted with this pattern. I'm not sure. But also in Denmark, our summer is pretty short. It's 3 months at the most. So you don't want to spend months and months knitting something that you won't wear for long. At least I don't. Let me get to the yarn. I have shown it previously. It's called El Lineo. And it's a German yarn by a company called Schoppel. And it's 100% linen. And it feels a bit sort of, it makes a sound when you sort of touch it like that. But it feels pretty soft. It's like one of these chains. I don't know if you can see that. It's pleasant to knit with. I don't find it annoying or irritating or dry. It slides pretty easily across my needles, so I have no problem with that, which I was fearing based on what other people have said. So I'm definitely positive so far. I don't know what it's going to be like once I wash it and wear it. Hopefully just a little softer. The fabric feels a little like it should be a bag at this stage, but I'm hopeful that it's going to become softer once I wash it. So I'll keep you posted on this. And I have a deadline because for a summer holiday, we're going to Greece. And it's very hot in Greece during the summer. So I think this is going to be tested down there to see if it's going to be ideal for hot weather. And I suspect it will. So I'm looking forward to finishing that. But I'm also looking forward to continue knitting it. It's a pleasure to knit it. I love the mixture of lace panel and then this sort of ribbed stockinette at the side here. And something else about the yarn, which I'm probably going to say that when I show the finished product, but this is the yarn that's used in the pattern. And the only reason why I bought it, apart from the fact that it's in the pattern, is that I could get it in Denmark. Had it only been available from abroad, which would have added the VAT to my purchase, I would have just bought another linen or another white yarn to knit with. So I wouldn't worry too much about being able to get this if you're wanting to knit the Joni. I would just go for linen or maybe even silk. I've still to try something in silk, which I'd also like. One thing that I've thought about is that many of the summer or spring patterns often don't have color work in them. Probably because they're mostly knitted in cotton and linen and silk, and maybe those yarns aren't ideal for color work. But I think that's also why I haven't been so drawn to them, because some of them are a little simpler to me, and then I guess I would just really prefer to wear a cotton t-shirt or a cotton tank top. But I'm coming around to those springy, summery patterns, and I will be knitting one more. And really in Denmark, they have to be those t-shirts or sleeveless tops. You can't really. I've seen some podcasts, probably North American podcasts, where they talk about things that you can throw on when you walk into air-conditioned rooms. Well, I don't think I've ever walked into an air-conditioned room in Denmark. Presumably there are some, but we generally don't have aircon in Denmark. We've got a summer that lasts 3 months, so there's really no need. Although it can get pretty hot here in the summer, but I think it's a cultural thing more than anything. So I think it's both a weather thing and a cultural thing. You will have places, maybe stores, that have them, but I've never been in a private home that has them. Not even my local gym has aircon, so it gets pretty hot in the summer. And of course also, I have so many warm sweaters by now that, if I continue at this rate, I'm just not going to be able to wear them. So for that reason also, I want to knit some more summer patterns. Oh, I want to ask you a little something though. I've already asked someone about it because this is knitted on 3.5 millimeter needles. So it's not a quick knit. It's not toothpicks either. But to me it almost is. But the pattern, when you pick up for the neck and for these little sleeve caps, you're supposed to use a 3.25 needle. And I know that some patterns call for that. I have never seen a Danish pattern call for that. It's either 3, 3.5, 4, etc. So I don't have a needle in that size. So I'm wondering, am I being lazy if I use a 3mm needle? Is it even correct? Should I get the 3.25 just for that little bit of knitting? I don't know. I'm probably tempted to just go for a 3mm. It just seems easiest. And on the horizon for me is actually another summer top that I will be test knitting for Aegyoknit any day now. And I'm also going to use white, but not bright white. This one is almost, I would say it's almost snow white. And the one I've chosen to knit the top from Aegyoknit in is a combination of Japanese cotton and then again the Trio 1 in a kind of cream color. I'll insert a picture of the top here. You can see the cotton here. It looks very sort of stringy, like something you would use for a basket or a bag. Here's the Trio 1, and the Trio 1 has this lovely sheen to it. I don't know if you can see it, but it's very soft, and I've just knitted this using the Trio 1, so I quite like it. The pattern also has an option where you use one strand of the Japanese cotton, one strand of the Trio 1, and one strand of an alpaca, a thin alpaca from Xeon. And I've touched Caroline's finished garment, and it's very soft. But I just know with me and my skin, I needed to go for something where there was no alpaca or anything remotely woolly in it for a summer garment, because I want to be able to have it on my skin without something underneath. And also, let's face it, I'm at a time in my life where I easily get hot. So I really don't need wool on my body or alpaca in the summer because, I can get hot at the craziest times, which is another reason why to make more cardigans. Okay, so I'm looking forward to casting that on once I get the pattern. She's still working out the final details. And hopefully I will be able to show you that in the next video or the one after that, depending on how fast I knit and how soon I'm going to podcast again. Something else, one of you wrote to ask me if I had the pattern for this beautiful cowl that Beata in New York knitted for me. And Beata has been kind enough to send me a picture of how she made the pattern, because it's not a pattern she bought, but a pattern she made up herself based on a Ralph Lauren sweater. And she made the sweater and then she made a cowl as well. So I think that's quite brilliantly done, but I'm not quite sure how to share it. I've taken a photo and saved it in my photo library on my phone. So let me see if I can figure out a way to save that or link to it. I'm not sure. If you have any idea, by all means, let me know. I'll try to see if I can add it to the show notes somehow. If not, maybe I could add it to the video at the end and you can take a screenshot. I'm not sure. Let me just take a sip of water. A little bit about knitting plans. Obviously, the yarn that I have is going to be knitted up at some point, so I would consider that a knitting plan. Not necessarily what I'm going to be knitting with it. A few of you had ideas for this lovely fluoro morganite that I bought from La Bien-Aimée. One or two suggested that I knit the ranunculus with it, and I sort of mulled that idea over for a while, thinking that could be nice. But then somebody else wrote to say that she had actually knitted the ranunculus using this moondrake yarn that I showed in the last video, with 2 skeins of that. And of course, I bought 1 skein in New York, so now I'm kicking myself for not having bought 2. But I think Brooklyn General Store do ship, so that's definitely the idea I can't shake right now. And if I don't want to knit 2 ranunculus sweaters, that means I'm going to try to find a different pattern for this. And I already perhaps have. I've swatched for a pattern, but I'm completely on the fence about it still. Because what I was actually planning on, or dreaming about, I might say, so it's somewhere between a knitting plan and a dream knit, is one of Sari Nordland's summer tees, or summer tops. But she almost always calls for DK weight, and this is fingering weight. Okay, that means I could knit a bigger size, but then I would be afraid that I don't have enough yarn, especially because the ones I'm thinking of have quite a lot of both cables and little baubles, and they typically take up a bit more yarn, which means I would need to knit an even bigger size, and I'm not sure I want to be that daring. Plus, I already have some of her other patterns in my queue. She's definitely one of those designers whose sweaters I want to knit. I'm still undecided, but I'm feeling very tempted to start to knit something in this very soon. I'll keep you posted. Then there was a little birthday sale, I think it was, at Moonstruck Knits. So I bought 2 of her shawl patterns. They're absolutely beautiful, and I definitely want to knit one of them. I don't know which one yet. And the reason why I'm still undecided about either of them and have not even remotely cast on anything is that I've yet to find yarn for it. Obviously, for a shawl, you want to be able to wrap it around your neck, and this is where my skin is most sensitive. So I want yarn that's very soft, and I'm gravitating towards the colors that she has used in both patterns. So I think I would want to try yarn that's that has the same colors, but then it also has to be really, really soft. So I'm not sure about that, but that could actually, for me, be a summer knit, because it would be ideal to throw around you, on a chilly summer evening, or if you're at the beach or something. I think that would be lovely, but not just yet. I've seen some other shawls by Inez Sang that are just gorgeous. So those are definitely on my radar as well. And a shawl is certainly also something that I want to knit. I don't see many people wearing shawls in Denmark. And of course, now the minute I've said that, no doubt somebody's going to write, oh, I've knitted shawls and everybody I know wears a shawl. Okay. But I haven't seen any here. I haven't seen any Danish designers really make any shawls, apart from that one Sophie shawl by Petite Knit, which is recent. So in the past many years, it's not something apparently that many Scandinavian knitters or designers feel drawn to. But that's no problem for me, because I've found plenty of shawls that are beautiful from other designers. So I just have to decide. And above all, I have to find yarn that's soft enough in the right colors, because the colors that Natasha Hornby calls for in both the Linnea shawl and the Man shawl are rustic yarns. So they look beautiful, the stitch patterns come up nicely, but they would be too rustic, I think, for me and my skin. Before I show you the yarn that I bought, I just want to say thank you to 2 podcasts that have mentioned me and my channel and theirs. One is The Pine Cottage, so thank you so much, Nicole. Go check her out if you're looking for more inspiration. And the other is Knit Together with Kim and Jana, whose podcasts I've watched many times, and they're absolutely delightful. So that's so kind. This knitting community is quite lovely and supportive. And I feel I would be really good friends with all of the above, so why don't you live closer? And it's funny because when I flew to New York before Easter, right when we landed, or before we landed in Newark, when you fly from Denmark to New York, you don't fly straight across the globe like that. You fly above, because that makes the flight a little shorter. So we came over Greenland and Canada, and then I think over Greenland, and then down sort of above New York State before we reached New York City. As we were hovering above New York State, I remember thinking, oh, somewhere down there are Kim and Jana. And somewhere down there is Pick Up Every Stitch. I wish I could go visit. There was another channel that mentioned me, but I just, for the life of me, cannot remember it. So I'm really sorry about that. If you find out, and if you see this, please let me know, because I do want to say thank you back to you. And finally, I want to mention 2 other people, Carmen and Jackie, who are certainly connected to the yarn that I bought. So first, let me just mention their podcast. They're called Knitting a Good Yarn, and that's because they are all about the musing as well, musing aloud, if you will. They're delightful people. I feel we're friends. They knit the most beautiful garments, mostly garments, every now and then a shawl also. And I guess a shawl is considered a garment. And a few hats and other accessories, but mostly a lot of sweaters. And I'm there for it. And before I went to New York, I'd mentioned here about the different yarns that I was sort of craving that I couldn't get here. And a couple of viewers wrote to tell me, why don't you buy the Sonder yarn and then ask them to ship it to your hotel in New York? And I thought, excellent idea. And I wrote to them, and Melissa from Sonder Yarn wrote me back saying that that was no problem, sure. And then Carmen from Knitting a Good Yarn wrote to me saying, why don't I just bring it with me when I visit you in May? And I was like, what memo did I not get? Visit me in May? And she wrote back to say, I probably forgot to tell you, but my husband is coming to Denmark to give a talk at the university in Odense, where I live. So I'm going to go with him and visit you. And of course, I cleared my calendar to spend the day with Carmen. When Carmen was here, we talked nonstop from the moment I saw her at the station until I handed her back to her husband 6 hours later. And it was a complete joy. So I feel I now have knitting friends on the other side of the Atlantic, and that was just a joy. Jackie I haven't met yet, but I feel it's definitely on the horizon, and we've texted over Instagram. They're really good people, so I would definitely go check them out. So I bought the yarn, had it shipped to Carmen's address in Canada, and she brought it with her to Denmark when she visited me. So let me show you the yarn first of all. Sorry for the crinkles. It's interesting because podcasters always apologize for the crinkles. And here's maybe a bit of oversharing, but I like sometimes watching ASMR videos where there's quite a few crinkles. So I'm all about the crinkles. So to me, no need to apologize. Unless it's a little loud, which it might be here. This is the yarn that I bought. So I bought Sunday Morning DK and Halo. Look at this beautiful pale minty color. I just love it so much. The DK is a mixture of BFL and Masham, and the color is called Window Shopping, and this is called Glace, which means ice, I think, in French. So it has this sort of very muted minty color, not as bright as turquoise, which is exactly what I was going for. I've been swooning over their colors for a long time. They have so many beautiful colors. But as I wasn't planning on buying anything, I didn't have to make a decision on that. Then when suddenly I could buy yarn and have it either shipped to my hotel or brought to Denmark, I had to make a decision. And I remembered seeing Joni on the Grocery Girls wearing a sweater actually designed by Melissa from Sonder Yarn, the Easy Like Sunday Morning, in this minty color. I think Jodi's also has sparkle in it. And me being from Scandinavia, probably, I don't know, it's because we're not extremely flashy in this country. It's not that sparkle is flashy, but I think I would probably get more wear out of it if I don't include the sparkle. Although, of course, I was tempted by it, seeing Joe's example, so I'm not sure. But I think it's still going to be pretty good. And right now, my plan is definitely to knit the Easy Like Sunday Morning sweater. That may change if I see something a bit more, I don't know, complex. Because the Easy Like Sunday Morning sweater is not only easy to wear, but I think also pretty easy to knit. And I've been knitting relatively complex patterns, which means I've probably told myself that that's what I will still continue to knit. But actually, I find that I would also like some in-between projects that are just more simple to knit, easier to knit, more like TV knitting, social knitting. And also, I really like the fit and the style of the Easy Like Sunday Morning sweater. So that may be coming up at some point. But while this color is quite springy, it's probably going to be a bit warm to knit right now. So I think it may not be for a while yet, but you will see it here first when it does get knitted up. The reason why I think there's a certain symmetry to knitting that sweater as well is that the yarn is Canadian. Melissa, who designed the pattern, is Canadian. I first saw it on Joni, who's Canadian, and then Carmen, who's Canadian, brought it over. So I should definitely knit a Canadian pattern, probably that particular one. I also like how there was this little sticker on the yarn, Knit Your Story, which is just perfect because this particular sweater will certainly have a story for me then. And also because I guess my tendency to muse aloud here is connected to storytelling, or is connected to stories. And Carmen and Jackie are also all about the stories and knitting a good yarn. So to me, it would make perfect sense to knit that particular pattern because all these Canadians are involved in it, even if Jodi doesn't know it. And I also bought one random skein of Sonder Yarns Haze in the color Musée, which is museum in French. And I'm not even sure what this is. Is it like a mauvey? Yeah, I was going to say mauvey gray, but it's not actually gray. For some reason, it's one of those colors I'm drawn to, and I'm not even sure it looks good on me, and I certainly have no idea what to knit with it. But sooner or later, I'll find out. I wanted to see what the quality of it was like, because as some of you have also commented on, I think Suri alpaca is going to be a good quality for me and my skin. And I think you can also knit with it without necessarily using another yarn. If I was a faster knitter, there's another summer springy knit that I'd like to knit, which is this kind of blouse from another Danish designer called Refined Knitwear. I think it's really beautiful, but I think it's also on small needles, so I probably won't have time for it this summer. And also I really like the color that she's chosen for it, which is the same color I'm going to be knitting the next summer top in. So maybe I should try to vary my knitting a little, but I'm really drawn to it. And I think it has a lovely fit, so maybe it's in my future at some point. So I'm almost at the end here, and I think I just want to end by showing you what sparks joy for me at the moment, to quote Marie Kondo. Hello friends, I'm out in the garden to record a little bit of extra segment that I have to incorporate into the video, sadly. And it's just a little bit of FYI. I recorded most of the video Friday, which is 2 days ago, and yesterday my Instagram account was hacked and I no longer have access to it. How it happened was someone that I'm friends with on Instagram asked me, or sent me a message asking me to help her get access to her account. She'd been locked out. And of course I wanted to help. She told me I would get some kind of link, and I wouldn't even have to open it. I would just have to forward it to her, which I did. And apparently that was enough. I did think her tone was a bit rude. You know, she didn't say, "I'm sorry and could you please and thank you." But I thought, I'll help. And I shouldn't have done that. So if you get any of those messages, ignore them, block them, report them. I'm not even sure I can report the person or people who took over my account, but they immediately posted stories with bitcoins and all kinds of baloney that of course is not connected to me. So I have no longer got any sort of control over that account. I have created another one. So if you're active on Instagram, I hope you will find me there and follow me, and maybe if you have the time, leave a couple of comments and stuff like that. It's still called Helle's Knitting Journal, but instead of the underscore between the 3 words, lawnmower just started, it's full stop. So Helle's full stop knitting full stop journal. Thank you so much, and sorry about having to add a little unnecessary bit of drama here. But I feel my Instagram account is, of course, linked to the YouTube channel. Imagine if it happened to the YouTube channel. Oh my goodness. So anyway, thank you. And I know other podcasters talk about what brings them joy as well. I think she talks about how when you try to be more minimalist in your home, you look at an object and say, does this spark joy? If not, out it goes. So anything can spark joy, obviously, not just when you need to clean out all your stuff. But the most obvious thing that sparks joy for me right now is my garden, and especially the lilacs. Would you just look at this? You can only imagine the smell of it. I'm all about the lilacs, and I know that they're gonna, I can see a couple of leaves here. They're already beginning to turn brown, so it's definitely something that you need to savor right now. These were originally pink. You can perhaps still see a couple of pinkish blossoms here. I don't know if you can. It's called, the breed here is called Beauty of Moscow, but they've already paled to white, which is interesting, but also tells you something about how fast it goes. And then this one right here, it hasn't quite bloomed because it's in the shade in my garden. So these are 3 different kinds, 2 different kinds of purple. This one is one purple, whoops. And this is another, and then this pinkish white now. I'll show you a few more clips from my garden if you're interested, because it's really beautiful right now. There's a wisteria that's climbing. I can see it from where I'm sitting. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's climbing up around the corner of my house, up until the very top of the roof, which is about maybe 8 meters. And it's very pink, light pink right now. And it also pales to white. And that's how I first saw it. I first saw it at Sissinghurst in southern England, which is one of my favorite places. If you ever get a chance to go to southern England, any time of the year. I was there at the beginning of July, which is when the roses were in bloom and the wisteria. Please do yourself a favor. If you're any kind of garden lover, you must visit Sissinghurst. Now, I'm both a garden lover and a lover of literature, so I absolutely had to visit. Vita Sackville-West was an English author who was in a relationship with Virginia Woolf for a while. She and her husband had this amazing garden, and it's just so wonderful. You really just want to go and spend your whole day there. It's a different world entirely. And I saw the wisteria climbing up on one of her red walls, the brick walls. The place where she lives at, it's like a manor house, and it's Elizabethan, I believe, or Tudor. And so there was this white wisteria climbing up the wall, and it was just so beautiful. And back home, when I wanted to find a wisteria, I realized that, or maybe there is a one that's just white, but the one I bought at any rate begins with this light pink color, and then it turns white after a little while, and it's just so beautiful. This time of year right now, I just savor it so much. But it's been cold, so definitely I haven't been sort of, oh, it's too hot to knit. Not yet. And before I leave, maybe I should also say that if you have any particular ideas or themes or any suggestions for me to take up on this knitting channel, in these knitting episodes, feel free to tell me or ask me or suggest something. I can't promise I'll take it up. A couple of people have asked for tutorials or even how do I knit, where I think I'm perhaps not the best person to show you that. That doesn't mean I won't, but it means I think maybe there's somebody who's better at showing this. But I'm completely open because I know it's nice to also get some practical tips. So if there's anything that you feel you'd like to see from me, that where I can deliver, that wouldn't be too hard. Or, I don't know, something that you think is doable for me, feel free to ask. So that's everything from me today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you have something delightful to knit on. Somebody asked in another video, I wonder what everybody's knitting on right now. So if you feel like you'd like to share that in the comments below, please do. Oh, and I forgot. Somebody else suggested, why don't you do a knit along? And then she mentioned some of the patterns that she's got, which were by Danish knitwear designers. And I thought, me host a knit along? That sounds a little grand or out of my league or something. But then I thought, why not? If other people would like to do that, it would be fun. I have no idea how to do it. But I was thinking something along the lines of Nordic knit along or Nordic knits or something along those lines, where you could choose any pattern by a Nordic designer or Nordic yarn or anything that to you looks Nordic. And a Nordic designer is anybody who's from not only Denmark, but also Norway and Sweden and Finland and Iceland and the Faroe Islands. Those are the Nordic countries. So if that sounds like a fun idea for you as well, let me know. It could run for the remainder of the year. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for spending your time with me, and I hope you got a little something out of this video. Till next time, I hope. Bye.